Wait, your mother is coming to East Bay in a few days. Whatever else you're hiding, you'd better confess it all. After putting on a full show of motherly authority, she was finally satisfied and let her son go, telling him to get his daughter-in-law on the phone. Claire, on this end of the phone, took the phone and smilingly chatted with her mother-in-law for a while, apologizing and comforting her. Until the end of the call, looking at her boyfriend's back as he busied himself cooking in the kitchen not far away. Claire was silent for a moment, then spoke softly into the phone. Mom, when you come to East Bay, do me a favor. Bring Leo's diary with you. I'll give you a number. Within 3 days, the reveal. Daily request for demanding updates and gifts. June. The heat of summer gradually intensified. It was final exam season again, and the trending topics on Happy Nest and Nexus Social were once again dominated by related keywords. Countless people shared and reminisced about their stories and experiences from the most carefree 3 years of high school. After a sigh of nostalgia, they sent their blessings to the students taking the exams. The students of Berkeley were also looking forward to it, sincerely offering their blessings with clasped hands and devout prayers. Damn it, please let a lot of the new batch of Northwood high brats come. In the sweet return bakeries in both Northwood and East Bay, the Good Luck bread was once again sold out. The new Good Luck edition of the blockhead figures from Mako Entertainment was also snatched up by countless students and parents taking the exams. And the efforts didn't stop there. Under someone's direction, the blockhead figures also collaborated with Berkeley and obtained official authorization from many universities in the East Bay area to launch co-branded, university-customized blockhead figures. Each customized blockhead figure wore the uniform of its respective university, holding the university's emblem and school sign, with the words, "Welcome to our school" on the back. They looked so scholarly that it felt like buying one would grant you the blessing of a god of learning and help you easily get into your ideal university. Dr. Alistair Finch was very disdainful of this. You've got money on the brain. You're the only one who can make money like this. On a sunny afternoon, in the small pavilion in the garden in front of the faculty dormitory building of the old Berkeley campus, the old man and a certain someone sat across from each other at a chessboard, chatting idly. I heard you even got Dr. Chen Wangdao on board. So, the Berkeley freshman admission letters will come with an exclusive Berkeley blockhead figure as a souvenir? What did you give him? That thick-browed, big-eyed Chen Wangdao has betrayed his ideals. Leo placed a piece on the board, his expression righteous. Of course not. Dr. Chen and I were also considering the good of Berkeley. I told Dr. Chen that Mako Entertainment and Happy Nest will set aside a number of spots for Berkeley in our annual campus recruitment, and other positions will also give priority to Berkeley alumni to help the school solve the employment problem for graduates. The old man nodded in approval. Oh, that's not bad. Employment is indeed an important issue, and getting into your Happy Nest is not an easy thing. Paying such a price for just this much in return, you're quite generous. His tone was still filled with satisfaction and relief. But the next second, he heard a certain someone correct him without batting an eye. Well, it's not just that. Isn't it graduation season soon? Those senior students are about to leave and want a souvenir. So, I made a special Berkeley graduation edition blockhead figure. Oh, and there are also exclusive blockhead figures from more than 10 colleges. And each class also has a class-customized blockhead figure. Dr. Alistair Finch was dumbfounded. You brat, you're just shearing the same sheep at your alma mater, aren't you? Leo waved his hand. Of course not, of course not. He had also sheared his more motherly alma mater. Now, at Northwood High, from the younger students to the teachers, almost everyone had a blockhead figure. It had been completely conquered. Dr. Finch was still not satisfied. What's the point of making money at home? Go shear someone else's sheep. Leo nodded repeatedly, humbly accepting the lesson. Don't worry, I'm already on it. Besides Berkeley, there are also many other universities in East Bay. His own alma mater's customized blockhead figures were sold at a 20% discount, while other schools were sold at the original price. The old man looked at the list of partner universities that Leo handed him and saw some familiar names. The presidents of these schools are all old friends of mine. Leo glanced at the old man, so, add more money. The old man made a decisive decision without hesitation. Add 30%. The old and young men looked at each other and smiled, a sense of mutual understanding and satisfaction. Then one took the opportunity to steal a piece from the chessboard. The other stole, too. The conversation inevitably turned to the recent storm in D.C. Leo stood up and solemnly thanked the old man in front of him. This time, the old man had personally stepped in. As a national academician with students all over the country, a single article from him could be published in an internal reference and reach the highest levels. When he personally made a call, everyone had to give him some face. Hearing Leo's thanks, the old man just waved his hand, his expression nonchalant. You're a good kid. What you're doing is good. Since it's a good thing, it shouldn't be affected. With me and your senior here, the messy wind and rain from outside won't reach you. So don't get distracted. Just keep doing what you're doing now, step by step, steadily. Leo nodded sincerely and promised seriously, don't worry. I guarantee I won't let you down. In early June, Happy Nest and the East Bay Police Department, as the lead official body, jointly launched an anti-rumor platform. The platform was launched simultaneously on Happy Nest and the official website of the East Bay Police Department. Upon its release, it attracted countless attention from all sectors of society. The platform's functions were simple, the interface was clean, and its main purpose was to list and display various rumors and refute them from an official standpoint. It was concise, but had sufficient educational value and credibility. For a time, the previously chaotic rumor-mongering atmosphere on the streets and alleys of East Bay was cleared up. Within that month, the number of civil cases of fraud in the local area was reduced by a full 30%. This also attracted the attention of other surrounding cities. Neighboring government brother units personally sent people to learn and draw lessons, hoping to learn from the anti-rumor platform and promote cooperation in their own cities. The East Bay city government received rave reviews from all sectors, and Happy Nest's reputation grew even stronger. In mid-June, a week after the launch of the anti-rumor platform, the new co-president of Happy Nest personally visited the residence of the head of the East Bay city government, Governor Zhao. In the study, a certain someone sitting at the tea table held a teacup with a humble and polite expression. Sorry to bother you again, senior. My apologies, my apologies. Zhao Bojun, sitting opposite him, squinted at him. Apologies? I don't see it. Then he sighed. He had tried to prevent it. Oh, how he had tried. He hadn't expected the brat to bring his wife along with him. He couldn't just ignore his junior's wife. As he spoke, Governor Zhao smiled and poured a cup of hot tea for the young woman sitting next to a certain someone. Make yourself at home. No need to be polite. Treat this place as your own home. Leo's eyes lit up. Oh, as my own home. The next second, he was met with Governor Zhao's glare. I was talking to your wife. I didn't say you could treat it as your own home. Claire accepted the hot tea and smiled politely in thanks. Thank you, senior. Leo, watching from the side, pouted. What kind of senior was this, so biased? If he had known, he wouldn't have saved his life. This time, Comrade Bertha Sue had specially prepared a gift as a thank you for the senior's help during the storm in D.C. She had originally wanted to personally make a batch of cookies, but she was stopped by a certain someone. In ancient times, that would be the same as attempting to assassinate the emperor, right? So in the end, they just brought 2 cans of tea. It wasn't expensive, and given the relationship between the senior and the junior, Zhao Bojun smiled and readily accepted it. The fragrance of tea filled the study. The 3 of them drank tea and chatted about their recent situations. Hearing the young couple mention the e-commerce project that Happy Nest, Nexus, and Sterling were preparing, Zhao Bojun showed his appreciation and nodded slightly. This is a good thing. Portland has Alibaba. D.C. has JD.com. We in East Bay can't fall behind. We should also cultivate our own e-commerce leader. After a few comments, the head of the East Bay city government looked at the young couple in front of him and smiled encouragingly. Go ahead and do it boldly. East Bay is your backer. Before they left, Governor Zhao took a call and left the study first. Only the LNS couple were left in the room. The moment his senior walked out the door, a certain someone unceremoniously picked up 2 fruit baskets he had been coveting from the side and quickly called out to his wife. Hurry up. If we don't go now, we won't make it. Hey, you take 2 too. But he was a step too slow, because Governor Zhao, who had just taken a simple call, had already walked back in from outside the door. Claire hadn't even had time to react. The 2 fruit baskets that had been in her boyfriend's hands were now inexplicably in her own. And then she heard a certain Leo Hammer righteously criticizing her. Hey, wife, how could you do this? You can't take advantage of our senior just because you want to eat fruit. Look at how poor the governor's house is. He's practically destitute. This time it's okay, but don't do it again. After saying that, he had already taken the 2 fruit baskets back and, carrying them, had vanished in a flash. Zhao Bojun was at a loss for words. The senior and junior had another round. The junior won back a point with shamelessness. The esteemed co-president of Happy Nest, the executive director of the Nexus Group, a figure respected and admired by so many, and a master of being a rascal. Looking at the back of a certain someone who had run away in a hurry, Governor Zhao couldn't help but shake his head and sigh to Claire beside him. This boyfriend of yours, he's really hard to figure out. also looking at her boyfriend's figure running out the door, hearing Governor Zhao's comment beside her. At this moment, Claire, for some reason, was also a little dazed and absent-minded, and she spoke softly. Yes. Hard to figure out. In mid-June, the old Wallace couple rushed from Northwood to East Bay. Besides Susan Wallace's inspection of the bakery's recent situation, the main purpose of this trip was to see that brat of theirs who was said to have suddenly become some co-president of Happy Nest, a billionaire. When they personally visited the Happy Nest headquarters on the 61st floor of the Global Financial Center and saw the rows of business elites in suits and ties uniformly calling their son Mr. Wallace, the old Wallace couple were in a dream. They finally completely believed and accepted this dreamlike, incredible surprise. Old Mr. Wallace's mouth was practically splitting with a smile. He turned and said he was going to find a certain little brother of his to catch up and have some tea, and then he vanished. Susan Wallace, on the other hand, pulled her son aside and gave him a good talking to. You can't get cocky just because you have money. There are all sorts of temptations out there. If you dare to do anything to let our Claire down, watch out, your mother will disown you. After getting her son's grimacing promises and vows, Susan Wallace finally nodded in satisfaction. And before she left, as if she had remembered something, she privately found her daughter-in-law, and Susan handed over a whole bag of notebooks. Hey, the thing you asked me to bring. These are all of Leo's old diaries. They're all here. But Claire, why do you want these? After sincerely thanking her mother-in-law, Claire took the diaries, and that evening, back at the LNS house, she sat at her desk and, under the lamplight, carefully flipped through them page by page. Even though she had been reborn for 2 years, the diaries of a certain someone, which she had read more than once in the Wallace family home in Northwood in her previous life, were still fresh in her mind. Every line of text, every day's entry, even every detail, was clearly imprinted in her mind. Now, reading them again, it was just a matter of overlapping them with the memories in her mind, without any deviation. But the diaries went from elementary school to middle school to high school. But they ended halfway through the second semester of her senior year, with no entries after May 2007. That evening, at the dining table in LNS house, while the couple was eating together, Claire casually asked her boyfriend why he hadn't written in his diary for the past 2 years. A certain someone was slightly stunned, then answered righteously, "Who keeps a diary? Besides, if he wrote it, it would be easily seen by others and become black history." He had almost died of social embarrassment that year. The manuscript paper was densely filled with the words, Claire Sterling, Claire Sterling, Claire Sterling, flowing and unrestrained, soft and low, full of lingering emotion. To this day, he still regretted it so much he wanted to die. But, more importantly, Leo looked at his girlfriend sitting opposite him and smiled slightly. "I used to write a diary to express my feelings. When I was young, I was full of grievances and worries that I couldn't tell anyone, so I could only write them down on paper. It's different now. Now, I have you. A person's fate can change with just a small opportunity." Claire actually believed her boyfriend's words. In her previous life, in the Wallace family home in Northwood, she had learned from her conversations with her father-in-law and mother-in-law that a certain someone had indeed been ordinary before college. But due to his failure in the college entrance exams and a romantic setback, he eventually worked hard and became an outstanding teacher at a tutoring institution. Later, he even started his own business and built a name for himself. This all showed that her boyfriend had always had sufficient ability and talent. It was just that in the previous life, the opportunity for that fateful change came a little later. And the opportunity in this life, perhaps, was meeting the reincarnated her, Claire Sterling. So, being able to get into Berkeley and even build an incredible business like Happy Nest in this way, it was also reasonable. In his previous life, her boyfriend had also started his own business from scratch, so his skills in the business world in this life might be an innate talent. She had also had several in-depth conversations with that Hannah Ling from Happy Nest. She knew that even including the many functional ideas for Happy Nest, such as Happy Reviews and Happy Life, were only proposed by her boyfriend, and the results were the product of everyone's collective brainstorming and improvement, which was still logical. And the good-looking clerk model of the Sweet Return Bakery. At that time, a certain someone and she were both at Berkeley and knew nothing about it. She had confirmed with her mother-in-law that it was her mother-in-law's own idea. When all the clues and information were finally confirmed, each one seemed ordinary and reasonable. The inference in her heart seemed to become more and more untenable. Even Claire herself had doubts and asked herself, "Claire Sterling, are you overthinking things? Are you being too greedy?" To be able to travel back in time to the summer of her 18th year, to see the young man she thought she had missed forever in her life, was already a blessing from heaven. It was a compensation for the regret of that rainy night. How could she ask for more miracles? However, even so, even though the woman repeatedly reminded herself in her heart, a certain emotion in her heart still grew like a weed. The tremor in the depths of her heart trembled more and more with her heartbeat. It was as if a voice was stubbornly and persistently telling her in her mind, "Wrong." This summer, while the woman's heart was always filled with restless and complicated emotions, a small, unexpected event temporarily interrupted them. In late June, the couple received a message from Nevada. 2 days until countdown. Daily requests for demanding updates and gifts. He had just gone to Spirit Springs Mountain in March and learned that son, he was leaving the Hope School there. At the time, son, he hadn't made any plans for the future. He just said he would take a vacation first and go out to clear his head, because he had been interested in and longed for the northwestern lands of the motherland before he started teaching. And now that he had the opportunity, he wanted to go to Nevada and have a look. Coincidentally, this gave Leo an idea to solve a certain problem. The Million Tree Project, a public welfare project jointly initiated by Happy Nest and the East Bay City government, had a support relationship between East Bay and Nevada, providing donations and saplings for the prevention of desertification in the sandy desert areas of Nevada. Happy Nest, being a participant, needed a representative to go to Nevada to oversee the use of project funds and assets. At first, Leo thought about finding someone directly from his own company. When the company's employees first heard that Mr. Wallace had a mission, they were all quite enthusiastic. One by one, they beat their chests and made grand statements, vowing to go through fire and water for the company, that Mr. Wallace could just give the order, and they would be willing to go to the most difficult and arduous places to expand the company's territory. Leo was also very pleased, looking at this group of reliable subordinates. Then how about you all go to Nevada as a group? The generals of Happy Nest. Huh? Everyone was dumbfounded. After coming to their senses, they were greatly alarmed. The cleaning lady is having her second child. I have to go. I'll go clean the toilets now, goodbye. In an instant, they scattered and ran away. They talked about expanding the territory. Who knew Mr. Wallace was being serious? Now the company's business was booming in prosperous metropolises like the Yangtze River Delta and the Pearl River Delta. What could they do in a godforsaken place like Nevada? Eat sand. Soon the news spread, and the whole company was in a state of panic. Employees warned each other, "Be careful lately. Don't let Mr. Wallace have anything on you, Mr. Wallace is settling scores. If you offend him, you'll be exiled to the frontier to eat sand." Hearing the rumors, Leo couldn't help but be amused. They were talking about serious work. How did it become about offending him and being exiled? Besides, he is certain Mr. Wallace was not a petty person. But that afternoon, 7 or 8 employees came to the co-president's office in a line to confess. One by one, they confessed their mistakes with long faces. "Mr. Wallace, we were wrong. We were the ones who took the tea and coffee from your office last time. We'll replace them for you, okay? Please don't exile us." Leo, damn, he hadn't expected to get an unexpected bonus. He was almost tempted to really exile these guys. But objectively speaking, it was indeed not appropriate for these guys to go to Nevada. They were all technical talents in the internet industry, to manage desertification prevention and be responsible for planting trees. Their expertise was not right. Moreover, in such a desolate and remote place, ordinary people did not have the ability to endure loneliness. Speaking of which, Isabella Zhao was quite suitable. As long as that girl had her brushes, paints, and an easel, she could work anywhere. Give her a phone to play games and slack off, and she could live a good life alone anywhere. What was even better was that she was a hardcore garden grab player, liked to plant vegetables, which was a good match for planting trees. But thinking of the pitiful sight of the little girl drawing in the yellow sand with a fertilizer bag on her head, he also felt a little reluctant. Such a good employee. Can't accidentally play her to death. Thus, Sun E became the best candidate. Not long after returning from Spirit Springs Mountain, Leo and Sun E had a few phone calls. Sun E had already gone to Nevada and had even sent Leo some landscape photos he had taken during his trip. The desert, the Gobi, the clear springs, the snow-capped mountains, the boundless wilderness. From the photos, one could feel the photographer's joy and satisfaction. Sun E told Leo that he liked the local customs and people very much, and he had also seen a Hope School that was about to be abandoned, with a shortage of staff, so he wanted to stay there. Leo expressed his approval and support, promising to help rebuild the school. He then took the opportunity to ask for a favor, mentioning Happy Nest's Million Tree Project in Nevada and asking Sun E to help with the supervision and operation of the project there. The children of the local Hope School could also help plant trees in their spare time. and Happy Nest would pay them in the form of tree planting subsidies, which could also be used to improve their living conditions. Son E was very happy and readily agreed. The two of them had a life-and-death friendship forged in the storm and flood on Spirit Springs Mountain, and they both knew about each other's public welfare and charitable work, so they wouldn't be polite with each other. But then Son E made a condition. He didn't need any salary himself. And in exchange for his work, he asked Leo for a pile of materials, including desks, textbooks, school bags, stationery, and extracurricular reading materials. On the phone, Son E was also a little embarrassed. If it's really not possible, I'll do 2 jobs for you. Anyway, I have plenty of strength. But as for the materials, the children here are all poor. They need these things. At that time, Leo was silent for a moment. This was not the first time he had known Son E, and every time he heard him say such words, his heart was shaken. Lu Sun once said that our nation has had people who work hard, people who fight desperately, people who plead for the people, and people who sacrifice themselves for the law since ancient times. It is the existence of these people that constitutes the backbone of the nation. The ordinary village schoolteacher on the other end of the phone probably didn't need any worldly possessions or fame. Even if he missed out on the title of one of the 10 most moving figures in the southern province in this life, it did not prevent his light from shining brightly on this land. That noble character. One day, it would be enough to become a saint. So for the past few months, Son E had already started working in Nevada, and Leo was busy with the war with the Quad and Apex group, so he didn't have time to contact him. He only occasionally heard from the company employee responsible for the public welfare tree planting project that the project in Nevada was progressing smoothly, and the person in charge in Nevada was serious and meticulous, recording every expense and the use of saplings in detail. Leo was not surprised by this. He just told his subordinates not to neglect the supply of materials, books, and equipment for the Hope School there. Other than that, he didn't bother him much. Until now, in late June, with the summer vacation approaching, he finally heard from him again. When he received Sun Yi's call, his spirits were still high, his laughter hearty and energetic. Perhaps he had been baptized by the vastness of the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau and the howling sandstorms, and had been infected with some of the heroic spirit of the Northwest. On the phone, Sun E reported on the project to Leo, saying that the planting of saplings and the prevention of desertification were progressing smoothly. He also mentioned the situation at the Hope School. He expressed his gratitude to Leo and finally extended a warm invitation. You guys are on summer vacation, right? If you have time, why don't you come to Nevada for a trip? I promise it will be worth your while. Leo readily accepted. Coincidentally, the company was running smoothly recently, and he, the co-president of Happy Nest and executive director of Nexus, had nothing to do, just being caught between the employees of the two sides every day, dealing with all kinds of complaints and getting a headache. Going out for a walk could also be a way to escape the hustle and bustle. He mentioned this to his girlfriend. Chloe was also interested. The two of them were now the head and deputy head of the Sterling business division. But if there was real work to be done, they could just hand it over to the employees below. If nothing else, the newly promoted Clark Sterling and Evelyn Vance, these two capable generals, could handle the affairs of the business division meticulously, so there was no need to worry. He mentioned it to his friends in the single slaughterhouse. He also received enthusiastic support from all his friends. Kevin Zhao and Tessa Yuan, who were far away in Portland, had also just started their summer vacation and wanted to join in this time to have some fun. They had never seen the vast scenery of the Northwest, and it was a rare opportunity, so they had to go and broaden their horizons. That made 10 people. Finally, Anna and Wyatt Way heard about it and also wanted to join. This newly formed coincidence couple had just confirmed their relationship and were in the midst of their honeymoon phase. They were also full of excitement for their first trip together as a couple. And so, a complete 12-person tour group was officially formed. It didn't delay. Everyone quickly bought their plane tickets. According to Sun E, the place he was now in was a small town in the southwestern hinterland of Nevada called Xialaxiu Town. There were no direct flights from East Bay. They had a first fly to Carson City, the state capital of Nevada. On July 1st, as schools all over the country officially welcomed the summer vacation, the members of the Singles Slaughterhouse Tour Group also gathered at East Bay, Hongqiao Airport, and boarded a flight to Carson City. A few hours later, the plane descended through the clouds and slowly approached Carson City Airport. Through the cabin window, they could already see the vast plateau and rolling mountains below, the majestic and magnificent scenery of the Northwest rushing towards them. The flight landed. After leaving Carson City Airport, the group took a taxi to the city. Although this trip to Carson City was just a brief stopover, they were not in a hurry and decided to spend the night in Carson City and rest for a night. It was also a good opportunity to experience the local specialties in the capital city of the Northwest Province. When they arrived in the city, the group found a hotel and checked in. It is worth mentioning, when checking in, except for Dylan and Jade, the other couples naturally and generously asked for a king-sized bed. Only the new couple, Wyatt and Anna, were a little unnatural. In front of their friends, they pretended to be calm and discussed with the front desk. Well, take 2 single rooms, or a room with 2 twin beds is also fine. The hotel clerk at the front desk looked at the somewhat embarrassed and unnatural young couple, then looked down at the room availability and replied with a sincere and apologetic expression. I'm sorry. We're fully booked recently, and unfortunately, we only have 1 king-sized room left. The group of friends were slightly stunned. They frowned, feeling that something was not right, and looked at the straight-faced clerk up and down with suspicion. Damn it, why does that sound so familiar? Marco Schott dashed out of the hotel and specifically looked up at the hotel sign. Then he came back and gave his friends a thumbs up. That's right, Carson City Sheen Holiday Inn. Everyone suddenly understood, and then they were filled with admiration, as expected of that man's family. Reasonable. Hearing the clerk's reply, Wyatt and Anna were also stunned. Then they looked at each other, a little unnatural but still pretending to be calm. Since it's a coincidence, then there's nothing we can do. A king-sized room is fine. The coincidence couple is also CGNG. They settled down and put their luggage in the hotel. The group went out for dinner. They had been struggling with this matter. As tourists in a tourist city, what should they have for their first meal? They wanted something distinctive, but they didn't have enough experience and were worried about making a bad choice. Even though Jade and Molly had done some research, they couldn't be sure if the recommendations online were reliable. While they were debating, someone suddenly had an idea. I'll make a call. And then a call was made to his mentor, who was far away in East Bay, buried in work at the Sterling Business Division. The great General Evelyn, the local food expert of East Bay. Unexpectedly, her food radar skills were not limited to East Bay. When she heard her apprentice's request for advice, she immediately perked up. Carson City? That's a great place. I went there during my college summer vacation, so I have some knowledge of the local food. And then she began to list and introduce with great enthusiasm. 4 or 5 full minutes, without taking a breath, she listed 30 or 40 food check-in spots in the streets and alleys of Carson City, from street stalls to high-end restaurants to those obscure places that probably even the locals didn't know about. By the end of her list, the great General Evelyn was so engrossed that she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Hey, remember to take a picture and show me after you eat. Hello? Hello. The call had already been disconnected. For their first meal in Carson City, the group followed Evelyn's recommendation and found a small local lamb stew with flatbread restaurant. General Evelyn's recommendation was as good as gold. The group ate with great relish in the small restaurant, thoroughly enjoying it. When night fell and the lights came on, the group went to the local night market. They experienced the nightlife of the capital city of the Northwest Province. They returned after a fulfilling day. The next morning, the group checked out of the hotel. It was time to continue their journey, but they only knew from Sun that he was in some place called Xialaxiu Town. They didn't know the exact location. They asked the hotel clerk at the front desk, who frowned and thought for a moment. Xialaxiu? Then he had a sudden realization and slapped his forehead. I know. It's under Silver Creek City, right? Silver Creek County, Silver Creek City, Xialaxiu Town. Yes, that's it. That place is not close to here. You can check the flight schedule for today, or you can take a long-distance bus. The clerk was still kindly introducing and suggesting. The other friends listened intently and nodded, but there were 2 exceptions. At the moment the clerk said that familiar place name, Leo and Claire's bodies both trembled slightly. Silver Creek. Chapter 930, neither Leo nor Claire had ever been to Nevada in their previous lives. When they heard Sonny mention Xialaxiu Town on the phone before, the name didn't ring any bells. It was only now, hearing the words Silver Creek City from the hotel clerk, that it was like a brilliant flash of lightning streaking through their minds. Memories suddenly flooded back. In their previous lives, after 2008, apart from the Southwest earthquake, the most severe earthquake was inextricably linked to the name of this city. The Silver Creek earthquake. On April 14, 2010, at 7:49 a.m., this city, located in the southwestern hinterland of Nevada, was struck by a sudden catastrophe. There were a total of 6 earthquakes and 18 aftershocks, with the highest magnitude reaching 7.1. Over 2,600 people died, 270 were missing, and the economic losses were incalculable. It was another unforgettable tragedy for the nation, following the Southwest earthquake. Another scar on the land of the Republic. For the two reincarnators, even after a lifetime, they could still remember it instantly and effortlessly. As their thoughts returned from the shocking figures in their memories, the couple couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. That disaster, according to the timeline, would happen a year from now. Not now, so they didn't need to worry at the moment, and they still had enough time, like last year, to quietly contribute their own strength to this city that would face a natural disaster in a year, to try to make some changes. Leo thought even further. Coincidentally, Happy Nest and the East Bay city government had now reached a cooperation on the Million Tree Project, with a direct one-on-one support relationship with Nevada. Plus, Sun E was in a village under Silver Creek City, responsible for supervising the public welfare project of desertification control and also serving as a teacher at the local Hope School. With this series of connections, it would seem logical for Happiness to aid in the construction of school buildings and the renovation of old houses in Silver Creek in the name of public welfare to resist the future earthquake disaster. No one would be suspicious. Thinking of this, Leo felt even more relaxed. And then he couldn't help but find it a bit funny. First, he encountered a storm and flood at the Hope School on Spirit Springs Mountain. Now he had gone to teach in Nevada and had chosen Silver Creek, which was going to have an earthquake in a year. This old son, wherever he goes, disaster follows. Maybe you should be the one who's the trouble magnet? After leaving the Shinshin Holiday Inn, the group began to discuss their transportation plans to Silver Creek. The number of flights between Carson City, the capital of Nevada, and Silver Creek City was very small, and the remaining flight times for today were not suitable. And if they took a long-distance bus, it would take too long, and it would be inconvenient to move around. While they were hesitating, Anna raised her hand and suggested, "How about we rent a car and drive ourselves?" As soon as she said this, the other friend's eyes lit up. "Good idea. Annie Cakes is a genius." Kevin Zhao looked at Anna with admiration and gave her a thumbs up. That one night with Wyatt wasn't for nothing. "Annie Cakes, you're looking good today, and your brain is sharp." OW. Before he could finish, he let out a wail. The blushing Anna had furiously stomped on his foot. The poor Kevin hopped around, holding his foot. Quinn Liu was already impatient. "Let's do it. What are we waiting for? Let's go." There were car rental agencies in Carson City. The members of the single slaughterhouse tour group went to a place, paid the deposit and rental fee, and rented 3 Jeep SUVs at once, in pink, white, and black. For people per car, the space was just right. Next was the familiar grouping process. The LNS couple naturally took one car, choosing the white Jeep. Originally, the coincidence couple should have also joined their brother and sister-in-law in this car, but considering the need to escape from fulfilling their bet, in order to protect their boyfriend's family property, they resolutely stayed far away. So the two of them chose a black Jeep for themselves. After confirming that there would be no supply of cookies or snacks in the LNS couple's car, Kevin Zhao and Tessa Yuan also happily got into their best friend's white Jeep. And Jay Jiang reacted quickly. Before anyone else could say anything, she calmly spoke up first. "I'll go with Annie Cakes and Wyatt." And then she directly pulled Dylan into the back of the black Jeep, saving another dog's life along the way. Thus, the last two couples were left with the third car, the pink one. Quinn, the driving god, had already rolled up her sleeves with a grin. Come on, my driving skills have improved a lot lately. You're in for a treat in my car." The remaining Molly, Leon, and Marco turned green. The date cake guy grimly took out a bag of date cake snacks. "If we're going to die, we should at least fill our stomachs first. Let's have our last meal." The 3 Jeep SUVs' engines rumbled lowly as they drove through Carson City and out into the wilderness. As the wheels rolled over the last stretch of asphalt road on the outskirts of Carson City, the rapeseed flower fields of the Huangshui River Valley in the rearview mirror gradually faded into mottled patches of color. What lay ahead was the vast, blue sky of Nevada and the endless wilderness under the bright sunlight. The small convoy of 3 Jeeps drove along the highway, bathed in sunlight, facing the clear morning wind as they sped forward. In a lead-white Jeep, Leo was driving. The bright plateau highway scenery spread out before him through the windshield. But at this moment, while holding the steering wheel, his thoughts were a bit scattered. He was thinking about the reconstruction of Silver Creek, so he didn't pay much attention to chatting with the others in the car. Claire, sitting in the passenger seat, was also thinking about the same thing. Sterling had no business in Nevada, so if they rashly launched a construction project in Nevada, it would be a bit abrupt and hard to justify. However, fortunately, they had Sun E, an old acquaintance, as a pretext. When explaining it later, even if it was just as the new leader of Sterling contributing to a friend's good deed, it would seem logical and not arouse too much suspicion. And now her boyfriend was the co-president of Happy Nest, supporting her boyfriend's company's public welfare undertakings in Nevada. As a couple, no one could find fault with that. And Happy Nest disaster response mechanism could also play a huge role in the earthquake a year from now. As her thoughts reached this point, another idea flashed through her mind. It made Claire lose her focus for a moment. Happy Nest. Disaster response mechanism. Last year's Southwest earthquake. Although Happy Nest was already a top social media platform in the country last year, and it was a company's responsibility to respond to natural disasters and use its advantages to help the country overcome difficulties. But why? Does it feel like something is not right? Vaguely, Claire felt that she had caught something and had also missed something. But that wisp of thought was always fleeting, and she couldn't really grasp it. The couple in the front seat were both a bit distracted and absent-minded. The atmosphere in the car was surprisingly quiet. It made Kevin Zhao and Tessie Yuan in the back seat look at each other, a little puzzled. What's wrong? Brother Wallace, class president, do you two have something on your minds? Normally, you two would have already had at least 10 or 8 rounds of PDA by now. It's so quiet, I'm a little scared. How about you two kiss? As best friends, they were usually sick of the LNS couple's PDA, but today they hadn't seen a single instance of it since they got in the car, and they actually felt a little unaccustomed and inexplicably missed it. They were craving it. Just as they asked, the fat-headed parrot that had come along on this trip flapped its wings and volunteered. Me. And then it waddled over to Tessie Yuan. Beauty, a kiss, and was promptly swatted away by Kevin Zhao. Damn it, that's my wife. And then it was Kevin's turn to waddle over to his girlfriend. Wife, if they don't kiss, we'll kiss. And then he was swatted away by Tessa in annoyance. Kiss your head. Go kiss, reasonable. A bit of horseplay, but it did liven up the atmosphere in the car. Leo happily chatted with Kevin in the back about the fun things that had happened when the new batch of Northwood sightseeing groups came to Berkeley. Claire also joined the conversation with a smile. But in her occasional assenting words, she would from time to time glance at her boyfriend beside her. The faint cloud of suspicion in her heart still lingered, refusing to dissipate. From Carson City, they drove to Silver Creek. The journey was about 500 miles, a journey of more than 10 hours. The group had discussed beforehand and decided to take a detour to Lake Tahoe, which was not far from Carson City. It was just a slight detour, adding a few dozen miles to the journey. It wasn't much trouble. Besides, it was a magnificent sight that no tourist visiting Nevada should miss. As the cars drove further, the aura of the city was completely left behind. The air became clear and sharp, with a sense of emptiness unique to the plateau. When the Jeep's engine roared and the wheels crossed a high pass, the view ahead was suddenly torn open. No longer a narrow mountain road, but an endless grassy plain, so vast that it seemed to stretch to the end of the world. In the distance, several rounded snow-capped mountains stood silently like giants, their white crowns quietly watching under the deep blue sky. This was the prelude to Lake Tahoe. The advantage of self-driving tour was revealed at this time. The group drove on the empty highway, stopping and going. When they saw a beautiful view from the car, they would exclaim in excitement and eagerly get out to take pictures. Some were even nimble enough to climb onto the roof of the Jeep. Standing on the roof, they struck the most handsome and dashing poses, taking pictures with the snow-capped mountains and peaks in the distance. Jay Jiang was becoming more and more like a professional photographer over the past 6 months. Now she was busy taking pictures for the couples with her camera. The shutter clicked continuously. The viewfinder captured the different temperaments and intimate moments of each couple. But no matter what the temperament, it blended harmoniously with the scenery in the distance. Oh, leaving the men aside, among the girls, there was Tessa's quiet elegance, Quinn's graceful generosity, Molly's pure sweetness, and Anna's bright and magnificent aura. Against the vast backdrop of the distant mountains and wilderness, they were all enhanced, shining even more brightly. In the distance, the figures of shepherds and their flocks were so small that they seemed to become black dots in the landscape. Looking closely, one could faintly see a few wisps of smoke rising straight from the scattered tents, only to be scattered by the clear wind on the plains. The wind became the master of this world, galloping freely on the plains, rolling up waves of grass and flowers. It also brought the smell of burning cow dung from afar, ancient and distant, desolate and simple. Leo and Claire also got out of the car, the former taking pictures of his girlfriend with his camera. In the viewfinder, Claire just stood casually in front of the Jeep, taking off her sun hat. Her jet black hair fell like a waterfall, flying freely in the clear wind that seemed to have been blowing for 10,000 years. A few strands of hair fell on her forehead, but they couldn't hide her cold and otherworldly, breathtakingly beautiful face. Her temperament echoed the vast, distant mountains, as if heaven and earth were greeting each other. This moment of charm seemed so natural that even her other companions couldn't help but be stunned, captivated by the woman's beauty. Anna was even more excited, exclaiming, and hastily took out her phone, opened the camera, and aimed it. "Sister-in-law, look here. Don't mind my brother. Look at me. I'll take a picture." The woman casually brushed aside her scattered hair and waved at her best friend and sister-in-law with a smile. Then she turned her head again. Facing her boyfriend's camera lens, she smiled radiantly. Her smile was bright and beautiful, as if it made the thousands of miles of snow-capped mountains and wilderness pale in comparison. When the Jeep had driven for another half an hour, the color of the horizon ahead quietly changed. First, it was a faint touch of blue, like a reflection of the sky. Then the blue grew wider and thicker, its texture also changing from a light, pale blue to a deep, solemn sapphire blue. It no longer looked like a reflection of the sky, but as if a piece of the sky itself had been cut out and spread over the earth. Finally, as the road descended slightly, the three Jeeps rounded a huge, gentle slope. And there it was, laid out before them, Lake Tahoe. In an instant, all noise seemed to cease. It was not a lake, but a flawless, deep blue gem that had fallen onto the vast plateau. Or rather, it was as if the sky had torn a hole and poured out its soul. Its vastness was beyond imagination. The line between the water and the sky in the distance was blurred by the rising steam, making it impossible to tell whether the lake was embracing the sky, or the sky had sunk into the depths of the lake. The water was not still, but surged with a quiet and majestic power. The fine white waves lapped endlessly against the shore, layer upon layer, emitting a low and eternal sigh. Whoosh, whoosh, the sound struck directly at the heart. The sunlight poured down generously, reflecting like billions of fine shimmering lights dancing on the water, the light dazzling and intoxicating. Everyone who got out of the car and came to the shore was almost shocked by this scene. They were all speechless. They had read descriptions and seen pictures of such a scene in textbooks and photographs. But only when they visited in person and saw it with their own eyes could they truly appreciate the magnificence and grandeur of the northwestern landscape. The shock was indescribable in words. At times like these, adjectives were not enough. When you're not cultured enough, a single holy shit will do. Looking at this magnificent lake view, Kevin Zhao could only manage one sentence after a long while. Holy shit. Beside him, Marco Shaw looked at him with disgust. "Kevin, can you have some class?" When it was his turn, looking at this Lake Tahoe, he pondered for a long time and could only let out a huge sigh. My God, what a big lake. The laughter gradually subsided. Everyone stood on the shore, staring at the pure, gem-like lake water, and they all subconsciously held their breath, as if they were afraid of disturbing this eternal tranquility. Claire was also standing on the shore. The salty and cold wind blew in her face, carrying the deep scent of the lake water, as if it wanted to fill her lungs. The sunlight was incredibly bright, but the air was as clear as ice, as if she was seized by a huge, almost speechless sense of tranquility. In front of this overwhelming blue, she felt incredibly small. At this moment, Claire stared at the lake's surface, and she even had a sense of weightlessness. In a daze, it was as if all the light around her suddenly dimmed, like the moment before she was reborn 2 years ago, when she fell into a silent, lightless darkness. At that time, she had desperately reached out to grasp the most unmissable regret in her life. Just like now, almost subconsciously, she reached out her hand to her side, and once again, she actually grasped a warm touch. It turned out that at the same moment, Leo, standing beside her, had also subconsciously reached out his hand. Their palms touched and gently held each other. At this moment, it was as if an electric current passed through them. It was as if the scene from the lightless deep sea of the time-space transition 2 years ago was replayed. Their bodies both trembled slightly at the same time. They turned their heads at the same time. Their gazes met in a daze, and then they were lost in thought. They both suddenly had a tremor from the depths of their souls. That year, at this time, I also held your hand. After leaving Lake Tahoe, the group continued to drive for another 4 hours along the highway. They arrived at a small county seat called Masontown and found a simple motel where they planned to spend the night. Masontown was essentially just a tiny, remote settlement. Besides the official guest house, the small family motels were all rudimentary and rough around the edges. The vast chain of the Shinshin family businesses hadn't managed to extend its reach into this remote, southwestern corner of adapted Nevada. Fortunately, though the motel was basic, it was cheap, $30 a head for a shared room segregated by gender. It did have hot water and shared public restrooms, which was enough. When a group of friends traveled together, rough conditions didn't matter. As long as they were together and happy, they could find fun even in hardship. They were young. If nothing else, they were durable. That evening, they grabbed dinner at a random little diner in town and shared a few beers. When they returned to the motel, the boys and girls split up to shower. The boys' showers were quick and efficient, 3 minutes tops, head and body done. Afterward, Kevin, Marco Shaw, Dylan, and Leon immediately grabbed their phones and laptops and scattered around the courtyard, desperate to find a signal. They eventually crammed into the shared room with the best reception, ready to start a few rounds of auto chess. Tonight's the night. I'm ascending to godhood. Godhood my ass. You're getting your fiancé's engagement annulled tonight. Before the game even started, the room was already filled with boisterous shouting. Leo Wallace and Wyatt Way didn't go inside. They sat in the courtyard outside the boys' communal room, cracking open a few more beers, chatting casually under the bright moon. They talked about the D.C. political storm from earlier in the year. Leo knew that the Way family heir had contributed to easing the tension back then. Leo smiled, clinking his bottle against Wyatt's in thanks. Wyatt, who had long since heard the full story of that night at the Chang'an Club, still felt a thrill, wishing he had been there. The table flipping in the private dining room at the Pinnacle Grand in East Bay hadn't been nearly cathartic enough for him. If it had been me at the Chang'an Club, Wyatt declared, I guarantee you, I'd have smashed the ballroom doors on the way out. Leo waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't worry about it. I already handled the smashing part. Wyatt froze, then looked at Leo with genuine respect, giving him a heartfelt thumbs up. Bro, you're the GOAT. They laughed and clinked bottles again, settling into an aimless conversation. Wyatt recounted stories of his childhood with Claire Sterling. Nothing exceptional, mostly just a miserable history of getting body slammed. 1,362 over-the-shoulder throws. It could have been an epic movie. But then Wyatt sighed, reflecting, this woman, she's changed a lot from back then to now. Maybe it's true what they say. Women hit their peak in their 20s? Leo nodded slightly, agreeing. Listening to Wyatt talk, the image of the childhood Claire, the aloof high school queen, and the future CO perfectly merged with the Claire from his own previous life. Yet compared to the Claire who was now his girlfriend, she felt like an entirely different person. Even after 2 years of being a couple, the memory of that cool, stunning, and distant woman from his past life, set against his intimate partner now, still felt unreal, like a dream. But the memories of the last 2 years, the breakfast she slipped onto his desk in the high school morning light, the warmth of her arms hugging his waist as they rode bikes home under the small-town summer sky, and her sweet, sleepy face beside him in the morning sun, all proved that this reality was absolute. It was no dream. Or maybe it's the magic of love? Wyatt took another swig of beer, smacking his lips with a commentator's air. Then he suddenly seemed to have an epiphany. Hey, that's it. Anna's the same way. The first time I met her, I never thought we'd actually end up together. She seems like such a proud, elegant goddess on the surface, but once she's your girlfriend, she turns into a total goofball. Ha ha ha. The conversation had been going well. Until that part, Leo's brow immediately furrowed. Anna. Holy shit, they were already using pet names. As the big brother figure, Leo felt the familiar prickle of irritation, realizing his precious little cabbage was being grazed by a wild boar. He set down his bottle and eyed the suddenly obnoxious Way family heir. Speaking of dating, when are you going to pay up on that wager? Before the sentence was finished, the Way family heir had flung himself onto the ground, spread-eagled and apparently unconscious. I'm drunk, man. Let's talk about it in the next life. On the other side of the motel, the girls were still showering. Claire Sterling and Anna finished first and came out in their pajamas. The sister-in-law duo stood in the small courtyard, waiting for the others, engaging in some casual banter. Just like Wyatt across the courtyard wall, Anna expressed the same sentiment. I seriously feel like my brother has changed so much these last 2 years. He used to just be a good-hearted, kind, and brave, but ultimately insecure Leo the pig. I can't believe he's become so amazing, so brilliant now. The runner-up valedictorian of Northwood, a campus celebrity at Berkeley, co-CEO of Happy Nest, and a managing director at Nexus. His resume was already legendary in the eyes of outsiders. Even those close to him felt a sense of disbelief, as if they were in a dream. Claire subconsciously nodded. As Leo's most intimate and familiar partner, her feelings on this matter were even more profound and intense than those of her best friend and sister-in-law. That indescribable emotion was bubbling up, threatening to burst out. Moments earlier, on the shores of Lake Tahoe, when their hands had unconsciously met and clasped, the sudden jolt had felt electric. In that instant, she had almost blurted out the question that had been buried in her heart. But she held back. Claire looked up at the bright moon in the night sky, staring blankly. Her emotions were a complex, tangled mess, impossible to unravel. Then, Anna's voice came again. But it doesn't matter, though. Claire instinctively turned. Anna was smiling brightly and casually at her. No matter how much he changes or what he becomes, I know he's my brother. That's enough. Perhaps they truly were siblings. The way Anna spoke and carried herself was remarkably similar to Leo's own cool, composed demeanor. But those simple words, unexpectedly, pierced Claire's heart. Her body involuntarily trembled. Anna didn't notice her sister-in-law's strange reaction. After speaking, she muttered about how long the others were taking in the shower, and then charged back into the girls' communal bathroom. Presumably, Annie Cakes caused some kind of commotion inside. Immediate yelps came from the bathroom. "Hey, Annie Cakes, what are you doing? Stop it. Ha ha, that tickles." As cheerful laughter and roughhousing spilled out of the girls' room, echoing under the quiet night sky, it nearly tempted the boys in the neighboring room to sneak a peek over the courtyard wall. They didn't get far. A few bars of soap whizzed out of the girls' room and struck them square in the face, sending them tumbling off the wall. "What are you looking at, pervs? Go away, creepers." Kevin, however, was tenacious. The first bar of soap hadn't knocked him down. He strained to look over the wall and spotted Claire standing quietly alone in the courtyard. He was surprised. "Hey, class president, what are you doing all by yourself?" Claire quickly reined in her thoughts, smiling as she waved. "Nothing. Just checking my phone." Before Kevin could respond, another bar of soap flew through the air, accurately hitting him, and he dropped with a thump. The courtyard fell silent again. Claire subconsciously looked at her phone screen. The page displayed the Reasonable Couple public account homepage on Happy Nest. A few photos taken earlier on the road had been uploaded that evening, and they already had tens of thousands of likes and thousands of admiring comments. There were countless uniform comments saying "so beautiful" and a perfectly formatted row of "holy shit, mom, look at the fairy." And, of course, the familiar persistent refrain, "T.O. hell with Northwood High." She had originally opened the page to reply to her fans. But at this moment, Claire's thoughts were too chaotic, her mind too restless. She quickly closed the comment section, exited the browser, and put her phone away. She missed the constant stream of admiring comments on the page. And she also, inadvertently, missed the many internal site messages in her public account backend, including one particularly important message. Or perhaps she had only missed it for now. The next morning, everyone woke early, washed up, packed their luggage, and left Mason Town, continuing their journey southwest along the highway. After about 4 more hours of driving, they reached Silver Creek City just before noon. They didn't linger there. They passed straight through the city limits and kept heading southwest. Xialaxia Town was located in a river valley about 40 or 50 miles outside Silver Creek City. The journey wasn't long, usually taking just over half an hour, but the route involved navigating a winding mountain road and then hitting Highway 214. It was the adapted Nevada's rainy season, yet the ground they passed was still cracked everywhere, like a dried-up riverbed. In the distance, a few yaks ambled across the highway, their copper bells clanging. Boys wrapped in faded robes hurried the cattle, their faces weathered and dedicated. Finally, tires screeched on the gravel road. The outline of the small town appeared in the bright sunlight ahead. Xialaxia Town. From afar, the town looked like an ancient, faded tapestry, torn by wind and sand. The first impression was desolation. The buildings scattered along the river valley were mostly low mud houses, their roofs weighed down by white stones for protection against the wind. It was noon. Cooking smoke was already curling out of the iron chimneys on the mud rooftops, mixing with the scent of burning yak dung and grass ash, quickly shredded by the strong west wind. Occasionally, there was a small herder's shop lining the street. In addition to basic necessities, they sold ethnic clothing, beef and mutton, fried bread and butter tea, and local specialties like cordyceps. But they looked deserted with few visitors. The entire town wasn't very large. To call it a town was generous. It was closer to a large, remote village. It was a nationally recognized poverty area, still home to over 300 low-income households in this year. The only public facilities were a central boarding school and a small clinic. Mobile network coverage barely reached the government center. Leo and the others searched for a signal for a long time, finally managing to contact some who gave them detailed driving directions. Soon, the three Jeep SUVs followed Highway 214 through the town toward its edge. As the wheels ground over the last stretch of gravel slope, a cluster of blue and white buildings stood abruptly in the open expanse of the barren plain at the end of their sight line. That was the place he had mentioned on the phone, the Danka boarding school, where he had been volunteering for the last few months. Leo and the others opened the doors and stepped out of the Jeeps. The cold wind, thick with sand, nearly filled their collars, making everyone instinctively pull their heads back. Looking up, they saw a blue and white, three-story stone and brick teaching building, connected to a smaller student dormitory and dining hall. The cement walls of the teaching building had fresh paint, but wind erosion still scarred the corners. Several window panes were broken and roughly replaced with plastic sheeting, flapping in the wind like gasping lungs. Clothes of varying sizes hung on the line outside the dormitory, resembling a string of faded flags fluttering in the breeze. The open area in front was the playground. A group of local children chased a deflated soccer ball, their running kicking up dust that swirled like a yellow cloud. One small boy stumbled on the sand, but didn't cry. He just dusted himself off, flashed a toothy grin, and rejoined the game. Son E, the teacher in charge, had been refereeing the children's match. He kept waving his hands and gesturing. Clearly, judging by his clumsy movements, he didn't understand soccer, focusing more on making sure the children didn't get hurt. Hearing the Jeep engines outside the school, he turned, seeing Leo and the others climb out. His face lit up with joy, and he hurried toward them. "You made it." They had last seen each other almost 6 months ago. Compared to their farewell at Spirit Springs Mountain, Son E had changed dramatically. He was darker, thinner, and his face was reddened and rough from the desert wind and sand. He wore leather boots and local robes with sleeves that were frayed, exposing white cotton stuffing. He looked every bit like a local herder. Only his spirit was unchanged. His eyes were still bright, reflecting a scholarly, gentle smile. Leo stepped forward, smiling, reaching out. "Well, cool," he almost blurted out Conan before quickly correcting himself. He smiled and clapped Son E on the shoulder. "Long time no see." The other friends crowded around, happily greeting Son E and teasing him about how much he looked like a local now. As they chatted, a group of local children who had been playing soccer emerged from the school and stood a short distance behind Son E. They stared curiously and shyly at the visiting strangers with wide, dark eyes. Noticing the group looking at the children behind him, Son E smiled and introduced them. "These are local kids, some from town, some from the surrounding villages." He turned and spoke a few words to the children in fluent Tibetan. The children then spoke in unison, their high, innocent voices shouting, "Tashi Delek." It was the Tibetan greeting, meaning auspiciousness and welcome. The sound was loud, buzzing their eardrums, but filled with genuine kindness and enthusiasm. The girls beamed and eagerly rushed over, wading into the group of children to hold their hands and talk to them. Education in this area should theoretically include both English and Tibetan language instruction. However, more than half of the local children weren't proficient in English, leading to a language barrier. The visitors mostly relied on hand gestures to communicate. This was Dylan's time to shine. Ninja Dylan made a steady display, rapidly flashing hand gestures at the children as if performing a continuous jutsu, dizzying to watch. Whether the children understood or not, he looked incredibly cool. They may not have read the Naruto manga, but they were wide-eyed with respect for the older brother's cool hand signs, rewarding him with enthusiastic applause. The glorious Hokage had arrived on his new land. Not far away, Jae-jung couldn't help but laugh at the sight. She raised her camera, the shutter clicking, capturing the scene. The others lacked Dylan's special talent, but they still contributed. Molly Tang looked at her boyfriend. Leon immediately pulled a large bag of date cakes and snacks from his backpack, handing them out with his girlfriend. Date cakes smoothed the way. Still effective, Anna and Tessie Yuan produced the fairy tale books they had purchased in Silver Creek City specifically for this trip, sharing stories with the children, who happily clustered around them, chattering excitedly. Some of the older children were more interested in the Jeep SUVs. They circled the cars, faces full of awe and envy. Quinn Liu grandly waved her hand. "Hop in. Big Sis will take you for a spin." Quinn, the resident gearhead, was surprisingly careful when driving with the children as passengers. But the children started clamoring, apparently dissatisfied with the slow speed. So the car goddess Quinn finally showed off her skills. The other friends would have been nauseous, but the local children loved it. They screamed excitedly in the back seats, not scared at all. When they got out, they gave her enthusiastic applause. Quinn's ego was instantly satisfied. She announced to her friends, "Holy hell, I want to stay here forever." After the initial meeting, Sun led the group on a tour of the school, with the children crowding around. Over the past few months, the teaching building and dormitories had undergone basic renovation, thanks to the aid and support from Happy Nest. While some parts were still ragged, further aid was on the way. The school would be completely transformed by the time most of the children returned after the summer break. After a brief tour, they followed Sun and the children on a 2-mile trek to visit the results of the wind-breaking and sand-fixing tree planting efforts over the last few months. The area past Highway 214 near Xylaxia Town was a stretch of sand dunes, the primary area for wind and sand control. Sunny explained that planting trees here served two purposes: preventing sand from blowing into the town and stopping the shifting dunes from burying the highway and blocking traffic. The planting method was specific. They couldn't just throw seeds onto the shifting dunes. They first had to lay down straw checkerboard barriers, then plant seedlings in each square. They used native shrubs like sagebrush and desert willow, complemented by ponderosa pine and cottonwood trees, along with quick-fixing grass seeds. The rainy season here is May through September. Sun explained to Leo. We utilize this time to plant the seedlings, and the rain helps them take root. The school kids have been coming with me every day during the break to help out. The progress is pretty good. Sun spoke with a sense of pride. The other friends were already eagerly following the children, inspecting the sand-fixing progress up close. Leo stood next to Sun gazing at the dunes in the distance. The straw checkerboards, laid out like military formations, tightly bound the patches of yellow sand. He could see the dense growth of sagebrush and ponderosa pines taking root, gradually forming a rudimentary forest. While it lacked the vibrant green of the coast, it undeniably radiated hope and vitality. He had seen the reports and data from his subordinates at the company. Seeing it in person, however, was a completely different, deeply moving experience. Leo turned to Sunny. "You're working hard." Sunny smiled, tapping his chest. "I can't take your salary for nothing." Leo rolled his eyes. "You make me sound like some black-hearted capitalist." Sun responded without hesitation. "Send 2 more batches of supplies, and I'll personally wash your black heart white, no matter how dirty it is." Leo immediately nodded. "Deal." They looked at each other and shared a knowing smile. The time since their first meeting at the Hope School at Spirit Springs Mountain the previous March was short, and they had only met 3 times. They weren't particularly familiar or close, strictly speaking. But in this world, some people shared the same ambition and values. Just a few meetings were enough to forge a bond of comradeship. While Leo and Sun were chatting, the others returned, having visited the tree planting project with the children. They were full of praise for Sunny. Achieving such results in this challenging environment in just a few months was genuinely admirable. Sun waved off the praise. "It's not enough. Once the rainy season passes, the wind and sand will pick up again. So, we need to hurry and lay down more straw grids this summer break." Some of the volunteer teachers had returned home for the summer. 2 newly graduated young female teachers had started recently, but they were currently in Silver Creek City buying supplies and hadn't returned yet. While the children helped, manpower was constantly short. Hearing Sun Yi's words, the friends looked at each other, readily patting their chests and speaking with determination. "No problem. We'll help out." The trip to Nevada had started as a vacation. Unexpectedly, it had turned into a working holiday. The members of the single slaughterhouse crew didn't mind. Contributing to charity, fighting against nature with human effort in this vast, windswept high desert was a rare and valuable life experience. As old friends, Sun wasn't about to refuse. So for the next few days, the group followed Sun and the local children, waking up early every morning, gathering seeds, saplings, and tools. They worked vigorously along Highway 214 and the adjacent shifting sand dunes, setting up straw checkerboards and carefully planting seeds and saplings. At first, their labor was clumsy and awkward. They carelessly stepped into sand pits, filling their shoes and socks. The unlucky ones fell head over heels down the dunes, spreading out flat and earning hearty laughter from the children and the rest of the group. The sound of laughter echoed across the vast northwestern plains, adding a cheerful element to the hard work. Over time, they grew accustomed to the labor and became increasingly skilled. During their breaks, they sometimes drove the Jeep SUVs, with Sun acting as a half-guide, touring the area near Xylaxia Town. They visited Liba Gorge, a sacred site for Tibetan Buddhism, where they saw cliffs carved with the six-syllable mantra and Buddha statues, as well as the birthplace of King Arthur, the local legend, with strange peaks standing like an array of 800 arhats. They admired the Xialaxiu grasslands, the largest alpine meadow in the region. In the July summer, the grass was lush, and cattle and sheep were scattered like pearls. Snow-capped mountains loomed in the distance, and nearby, they saw the black tents of the herders. They saw flocks of mountain sheep as they drove past rocky cliffs accompanied by a flowing stream. They visited the chapel of the princess. The story of Princess Wunsheng in their history textbooks came vividly to life among the princess's statue and the prayer flags, confirming the truth of 1,000 years of ancient history. They also stopped at Dragon's Peak Temple, near Highway 214. The red and white monastery perched on a mountainside, its golden roof shimmering in the sun like a flame. Rows of prayer flags fluttered, snapping in the wind like a flock of battling eagles. They entered every temple they saw, bowing before every Buddha. The Tibetan Buddhist temples also housed statues of the Buddha and Bodhisattvas. Claire, dressed in a simple white dress, stood coolly and purely before the Bodhisattva statue, holding incense. She gently lifted her head, meeting the gaze of the Bodhisattva. The scene was as beautiful as an ancient mural. She opened her lips, seeming to hesitate, wanting to ask a question, but ultimately stopping. Above the shrine, the Bodhisattva's expression was compassionate, head lowered, holding a flower, obscure and profound, as if everything remained unspeakable. That night, after the children had fallen soundly asleep in the communal dorm beds, the friends gathered around a bonfire in a clearing just outside the school. They drank and talked. They tried butter tea. They sampled local yak yogurt, and they feasted on steaming boiled mutton with bone, cooked with over 10 different seasonings, including ginseng and ginger, a hearty, satisfying meal. As the night fell silent, Sun E raised his bottle, thanking everyone for their recent help and hard work. Everyone raised their bottles to clink in return, chatting and laughing. As the intoxication quietly set in, the fire in the pit continued to crackle. Sun E, who held his liquor poorly, had a face even redder in the firelight. He raised his cup, sighing with emotion. Life is simple, really. The simpler it is, the happier you are. Know what you want, and hold on to what you have right now. Living your life that way, you'll have no regrets. He was a decade older than the rest of the group. His words were both a reflection and a big brother's life advice to his younger friends. Everyone felt a deep connection and resonance with his words. Looking up, the Milky Way stretched across the night sky like a waterfall, vast and majestic, like the star-filled sky over Mount Jade, but even more expansive and immense. With the earth and sky surrounding them, their hearts felt broadened and cleansed by the desert night, peaceful and comfortable. What was happiness in life? The answer seemed obvious. Molly nestled gently in Leon's arms, pushing a piece of cheese into his mouth. She ate her date cakes, smiling sweetly. Quinn casually stuck a sprig of wild grass into Marco Shaw's hair, laughing at her own antics. Marco, tipsy from the beer, turned confusedly to look at his girlfriend, making her laugh even harder. Tessa Yuan and Kevin Zhao spoke softly. Kevin must have said something reckless again, because Tessa, the former literature rep, angrily grabbed his ear, making him squeal in pain. Anna and Wyatt exchanged a glance. Seeing the warmth in each other's eyes, they gently held hands beneath the blanket of sheep's wool. Claire quietly watched Leo beside her, his clean, handsome face in the glow of the bonfire. She would never tire of looking at him. Every time, he brought her the greatest sense of stability and warmth. She stared, utterly mesmerized. Sensing her gaze, Leo turned to meet her eyes, questioning. Claire smiled slightly, leaned forward, and gently snuggled into her boyfriend's embrace, shielded from the cold desert night wind. Feeling the steady beat of his heart against her ear, she tilted her head up. The star-filled night sky was silent and magnificent. In the distance, an ancient, drawn-out Tibetan folk song drifted on the tireless, seemingly eternal wind, slowly smoothing out the folds of worry in her heart, cleansing her spirit. The clear night wind of the vast northwest plateau had, finally, scattered the complicated tangle of her inner turmoil. The next day, as another bright morning dawned over Xialaxiu town, Claire's restless mind had finally found peace. After a night of comfort in Leo's arms, she woke feeling refreshed and clear-headed. While Leo and Sun E drove to Silver Creek City for supplies, and the other couples went off to explore, Claire happily stayed behind to play with the local children. The language barrier was no obstacle. They communicated through gestures and laughter. Her smile was brighter and more relaxed than it had been in days. And even the children seemed to notice, gathering around the beautiful fairy sister, who now seemed so much more approachable. After telling them a story with a picture book, she stepped out of the classroom, stretching deeply in the warm, high-plateau sun. She took a deep breath of the crisp, clean air, feeling a profound sense of ease. Suddenly, her phone rang. In this remote town, a clear signal was rare. She glanced at the screen and was surprised to see the name Vivian Jung. She was Leo's childhood friend from Northwood. They'd met at the vault over winter break and exchanged numbers. Curious, Claire answered. Hello. Vivian's cheerful voice came through. Hey Claire, just calling to see when you two are coming back to Northwood for the summer. We should all get together. Claire smiled, explaining they were on a trip in Nevada, but promised to call when they returned. Oh, got it, Vivian said. Then her voice turned slightly shy. Well, when you two get back, you'll have to come to our wedding reception. Claire was stunned. She then learned that Vivian and Scott Wong, another of their childhood friends, were finally together. It made sense. She noticed the spark between them when Vivian had taken care of a drunk Scott after the KTV party. Congratulations, Claire said warmly. You two are a perfect match. Vivian laughed happily. Perfect? Please, that guy can't hold his liquor at all. He still insists he wasn't drunk that night at the vault. Apparently, Scott was right beside her because his indignant voice cut in. I wasn't drunk. I remember it perfectly. I even toasted you and Leo. Wanted to talk to you both. He seemed to have an idea. Perfect. Claire, you could be my witness. Last year, around late April or early May, you and Leo were both in the Southwest, right? I swear I saw you both at the airport. The playful chatter on the other end continued, but for Claire, the sound faded into a distant hum. A jolt of electricity shot up her spine, and her entire body went rigid. Scott's description was flawless. He had perfectly recalled her outfit from that day. A long black designer trench coat, a large black suitcase. It was her. And his description of Leo was also perfect. His suitcase was white, and the plaid shirt under his coat was the one she had personally bought for him last spring, the same one he'd worn home for winter break. It wasn't drunken rambling. He wasn't making it up. After that night at the vault, walking home, they had asked each other if they had been to the Southwest last April. Both of them had said no. She had lied. But why had Leo lied too? She had been there to handle Sterling Holdings' affairs in the region, preparing for the impending disaster she knew was coming. But Leo, what was he doing there? Her heart began to pound violently in her chest. An answer, so staggering it nearly stopped her breath, was forming in her mind. But she couldn't be sure. She hastily ended the call with a promise to talk later, her hands trembling as she tried to dial another number. It took her 3 tries to get the digits right. The phone rang a few times before Hannah Ling's voice came through. Hello, Mrs. Boss. What's up? Claire took a deep breath, forcing her voice to sound calm, though it came out tight and strained. Last April, did Leo go to the Southwest? The question was abrupt, and Hannah sounded surprised. But Claire had asked her about Leo's past before, so she didn't question it. Yeah, he did, Hannah said after a moment of thought. More than once, I think. It was for a project, that Brainiac Blitz app we had just launched. Claire froze. Brainiac Blitz? Yep, Hannah said cheerfully. We were doing a campus promotion for it. Little boss Lin didn't have to go himself, but he was really passionate about it and personally chose to handle the Southwest region. After all, the whole project was his idea from the start. All the quiz databases, the different modules for different regions. Hannah paused, tried to remember. The module for the Southwest region was. It was. Claire's trembling voice finished the sentence for her. The geological disaster prevention module. That's it, Hannah exclaimed. Geological disaster prevention. You got a good memory, Mrs. Boss. I remember he personally proposed that module in a meeting, and you won't believe it. Right after we launched it in the universities there, the big quake hit. A lot of people in the Southwest actually got through it safely because of the earthquake prep info in our app. The whole office was joking about it later. Hannah's voice, staticky over the poor connection, continued enthusiastically, saying our little boss Lynn must be a prophet, seeing the future, predicting a disaster like that. Haha. But Claire wasn't listening anymore. Her hand holding the phone was shaking uncontrollably. As the truth crashed down upon her, her mind roared. Happy Nest. CSO. The Southwest Quake. Brainiac Blitz. Her memories, sharp and clear, flooded back. The Brainiac Blitz game shouldn't have been a Happy Nest product in 2008. In her memory, it was released years later by a different company. The Garden Grab Charity initiative shouldn't have existed. It was a precursor to the future's Ant Forest. Happy Reviews was the future's Yelp. Happy Life was the future's Instagram. The campus rating system was a core feature of a sports forum that wouldn't launch for years. As the memories of two lifetimes overlapped and confirmed one another, the final answer was screaming to be heard. She should have known. She should have known long ago. When so many reasonable coincidences piled up, it became the most unreasonable thing of all. Or rather, the truly reasonable answer had been there all along. She had just subconsciously ignored it, time and time again. Of course, who would have ever guessed? She had always assumed that her rebirth was the only butterfly flapping its wings, changing the world. She never considered that in this vast world. Perhaps there was more than one butterfly. Her chest heaved with the force of her turbulent emotions. She fumbled with her phone, her thumb hovering over the contact name at the very top of her list, Leo Hammer. She had to press it. She had to know. But an indescribable fear held her back. The truth was just beyond a thin veil, waiting for her to pull it aside. But what if she was wrong? What if there was a 10% chance, a 1% chance, that it was all a devastating coincidence? What if she gathered all her courage, asked the question that held the weight of two lifetimes, and was met with a confused, blank denial? In her two lives, the decisive, formidable CEO of Sterling Holdings had never felt so hesitant, so terrified of being wrong. She stood there, phone in hand, her mind a chaotic storm. Just as Claire's world was spinning, the children behind her let out a sudden, joyful cheer. They rushed past her, running excitedly toward the school gate. Two young women, barely in their 20s, were walking in, their arms laden with bags of snacks and supplies. The children swarmed them, and the women greeted them with warm smiles, ruffling their hair and chatting in fluent Tibetan. Then, one of the children pointed back toward Claire. The two women looked over. Their eyes first widened in awe at her stunning beauty, then lit up with shocked recognition. "Hey!" one of them gasped, her face a mixture of disbelief and pure excitement. "You're from the reasonable couple." Before Claire could react, the two women had rushed over, buzzing with delight. "It's really you, the fairy sister from the Happy Nest account. Wow, you're even more beautiful in person. We're huge fans. We've been following you ever since your Aragorn and Arwen cosplay at the first East Bay Comic and Anime Fest. Look, here's our account. We've left you tons of comments and likes." They spoke in a rapid-fire torrent, leaving no room for a reply. To meet fans of her public account in this remote corner of the world was an incredible surprise, but Claire's mind was too much of a wreck to process it. The two women, lost in their excitement, didn't notice her distress. "Oh, and guess what?" one of them said, her face glowing. "We were on vacation in East Bay last time and went to this smoothie shop, and we saw a Polaroid of you and your boyfriend on the wall. It was such a crazy coincidence. We even took a picture and sent it to you in a private message. Here, look." As if afraid Claire wouldn't believe her, she quickly pulled out her phone, found a photo in her album, and held the screen up for Claire to see. Claire's mind was still a chaotic mess. She barely heard their words, but out of politeness, she forced a smile and glanced at the screen. She had only meant to look for a second, but when her eyes fell on the image, a composite of the front and back of two Polaroid pictures, her entire body froze as if turned to stone. Time stopped. The world went silent. There are moments in life so dramatic they feel like they belong in a movie. Things you thought were forgotten resurface. Details you thought were insignificant become the keys to destiny. And a message you thought you missed will find its way to you on a bright afternoon, carried on the crisp, wild wind of the high desert. Last Christmas, the bustling streets of East Bay lit up for the holidays. The warm, gentle light of the smoothie shop. The memory was crystal clear. She remembered the laughter of her friends, the exact flavor of the smoothie she ordered, and the kind faces of the young couple who owned the shop. And she remembered taking the Polaroid with her boyfriend and the messages they had each written on the back. Just like the words on the phone screen, now reappearing before her eyes. 2024. 4/1/2008. 12/25 finally, fated to meet again. That was what she had written. And on the back of the other Polaroid, in her boyfriend's familiar handwriting, was another message. 2024. 4/1/2008. 12/25 to meet once more. A dart thrown nearly 200 days ago had, in this single moment, pierced through the fog and hit the bullseye. The truth, spanning countless days and nights, crossing mountains and seas, piercing through two lifetimes. Finally, it was laid bare before her. A deep, guttural rumble came from the southwest. In the secluded sanctuary of awakening, the priest suddenly turned. At the Orchard of Fate temple, the young novice monk snapped his head around. Their gazes seemed to traverse the vast space, directed toward the horizon. Their expressions were moved. The heavens have shifted. Claire's eyes instantly turned red. Disregarding the two stunned fans, she fumbled for her phone, took a picture of their screen, and texted it to Leo Hammer. The message status bar crawled, then showed sent, but she couldn't wait another second. She immediately pressed the call button. Ring, ring, ring. It felt like an eternity before a familiar, relaxed voice answered. Hello. Claire listened to his voice, her eyes filling with tears. Her own voice was so tight with emotion she could barely speak. It was an impossible mix of grievance and a joy so immense it threatened to burst from her chest. He must have sensed something was wrong. What is it? His voice was staticky, but she could still hear the worry in his tone. Claire took a deep breath, trying to control her trembling voice. The first word was a choked sob. The shock of the revelation was so overwhelming she felt herself sway, a wave of dizziness washing over her. It was so intense it momentarily pulled her back from the euphoria, making her feel that something was terribly wrong. The next second, the ground beneath her feet lurched violently. Crash! The school's laundry racks collapsed. The newly repaired walls of the teaching building cracked and crumbled. The children on the playground screamed in terror. The two volunteer teachers, their faces pale with shock, finally found their voices, screaming at the top of their lungs. Be careful. Earthquake! Claire's mind went blank. Her phone was already dead, the line cut. She couldn't even process the deafening roar she'd heard through the receiver in the final second before the call dropped. Acting on pure instinct, she roared at the two terrified volunteer teachers. Get the children out. Head for the open ground outside the school. Without waiting, she sprinted into the nearest classroom herself. Jolted into action, the two young women followed, shouting instructions in Tibetan as they herded the frightened children out of the shaking building. Within minutes, all the students were gathered safely in the open field away from school. The ground had settled, but Claire's heart was still in turmoil. She had no time to listen to the teachers' reports. Only one thought dominated her mind, sharp and terrifying. Silver Creek earthquake. It wasn't supposed to happen for another year. Then, a detail she'd missed in the panic struck her like lightning. The epicenter. In her previous life, the most devastated area wasn't here. It was Silver Creek City. And just moments ago, Leo was right there. Her memory flashed back to the final, deafening roar on the phone. Her knees buckled, and she nearly collapsed. The situation here was relatively mild. But what about in the city? What about Leo? Miss, are you okay? One of the teachers asked, grabbing her arm. She was shocked to find Claire's hands were ice cold, her face utterly drained of blood. Just then, a low rumble echoed from the east. It was enough to snap Claire back to her senses. She tore away from the teachers and bolted toward the white Jeep parked at the school gate. At that moment, the other two Jeeps came roaring back, kicking up clouds of dust. The rest of the group had returned. There was an earthquake. Kevin shouted, jumping out his car. Is everyone okay here? Claire, Anna yelled, leaping from the other Jeep before it even stopped. Where's my sister-in-law? She saw her, a familiar figure already climbing into the white Jeep. Claire, Anna cried out in relief. But the only answer was the roar of an engine. Before anyone could react, the white Jeep shot forward. Claire, where are you going? Tessa screamed. The Jeep sped past them. Through the open window, they saw Claire's face, pale as a sheet, her jaw clenched with unyielding resolve. I'm going to save Leo. With a final press of the accelerator, the Jeep tore onto the highway and disappeared. The drive was a blur of terror and adrenaline. On the winding mountain roads, aftershocks sent rocks tumbling down the hillsides. One massive boulder crashed down, completely blocking the path just seconds after she sped past, her tires screeching as she swerved around it. Wyatt and Anna, who had tried to follow her, were forced to stop, watching in horror as she vanished. That woman, Wyatt breathed, his hands shaking on the wheel. She really has a death wish. Anna stared at the boulder blocking their way, her expression dazed. No, she whispered. It's my brother. He's her entire life. 40 minutes of road. Claire covered it in 20. When she finally reached the city limits, the sky was a hazy yellow, thick with dust. The damage was less severe than she had feared. Most buildings were standing, though rubble littered the streets. Cries for help echoed through the air. She abandoned the Jeep and ran, pushing through the chaos on foot. She called his name, her voice growing hoarse. She helped strangers dig through collapsed storefronts, her heart seizing with fear every time a victim was pulled from the debris, and then flooding with a strange mix of relief and renewed dread when it wasn't him. Her white dress was torn and stained with dirt. Her hands were raw and bleeding. Her ankle was sprained, sending shooting pains up her leg with every step. But she kept going, asking every person she met if they had seen a handsome young man in a black jacket. She was starting to lose hope when a familiar squawk cut through the noise. Queen Mom, Reasonable, the parrot, landed on a pile of rubble in front of her, flapping his wings frantically. Claire grabbed him, her voice trembling. Reasonable, where's your father? And then, a voice from behind her, filled with disbelief. Claire, it was a voice she would know anywhere in any lifetime. She spun around. There he was, standing under the awning of a damaged building, covered in dust, but miraculously unharmed. Their eyes met across the ruined street, and for a moment, the world fell away. It was a scene of such raw, unexpected beauty that it seemed to freeze time. Leo was stunned. The earthquake had hit while he was on the phone with her. He lost the signal and, after hearing the damage was minimal in the outlying towns, had focused on helping with rescue efforts in the city. He never imagined she would come for him. He saw her state, the torn dress, the scrapes, the tear-streaked, dust-covered face. His heart ached. "What are you doing here?" he started, rushing toward her. "You shouldn't have come alone." She was already moving toward him, stumbling over the rubble, her eyes locked on his. In her single-minded focus, she didn't see the cracked second-story wall of the building beside her begin to groan and shift. "Look out!" Reasonable shrieked. Leo's eyes widened. Without thinking, he launched himself forward, shoving her out of the way just as the brick facade crashed down where she had been standing. The world slowed. He saw her face, shocked, as he pushed her to safety. It was just like that rainy night in their last life, a tragic replay. A bitter thought flashed through his mind. Really? We're doing this again? But in that same instant, a small, strong hand grabbed his wrist, pulling him forward with surprising force. He stumbled, falling on top of her soft body as the wall smashed into the ground behind them, missing them by inches. Dust settled. He pushed himself up, his heart pounding. "Are you okay? What were you thinking? That was so dangerous." Claire lay on the ground, wincing in pain, but looking up at him with the most brilliant, radiant smile he had ever seen. "This time," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I caught you." Leo stared, confused. "What? This time?" A soft ding came from his pocket. The cell signal was back. Claire didn't answer his question. Her eyes, shining with tears, were still fixed on his. "You should. Check your text." He fumbled for his phone. There was a long list of missed calls from her, and one picture message. He opened it. It was a photo of another phone screen, showing 2 Polaroids front and back. He recognized them immediately. It was them from the smoothie shop last Christmas. He looked at her, still confused. "Keep looking," she urged, her smile unwavering. He looked closer at the messages written on the back of the Polaroids. 2024. 4. 1. 2008. 12. 25. His heart gave a violent lurch. How could she? He was scrambling for an explanation when a thought struck him with the force of a physical blow. That wasn't his handwriting. His eyes darted back to the screen. It was her elegant script. He read the line below the date, his voice a disbelieving whisper. Finally, fated to meet again. He looked down at her, his mind reeling. Claire's smile was watery but firm, and she completed the phrase with a voice that was gentle, trembling, and absolutely certain. To meet once more. His mind exploded. A flood of memories crashed over him. Her reckless driving through a flash flood, screaming, "I don't want to live, I want you." Her quiet prayer in the snowy chapel on Serenity Peak. Her tears at Berkeley, whispering, "In my dream, I lost you." The way she had stormed into his high school classroom, declaring him hers in front of everyone. And that very first day, when she had woken up at her desk, turned to him with a look of dazed recognition and thrown her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. "I found you." It all made sense. Every impossible, reasonable coincidence. The prophecy from the temple. Fated stars, forever apart, can finally meet. It wasn't a chance encounter. It was destiny. He looked down at the woman in his arms. Tears were streaming freely down her face now, but she was smiling, a smile so bright it outshone the sun breaking through the dusty sky. "Leo Wallace," she said, her voice catching on a sob of pure joy. "I think we've met before." That evening, the 2 reborn individuals, having finally found each other across time and space, were reunited with the rest of their friends back at the Danka boarding school. The relief and joy were palpable. Anna tackled Claire in a tearful hug, then turned to her brother. Claire risked her life for you today, Leo the pig. If you ever treat her badly, I'll let Wyatt bite you to death. Wyatt, standing nearby, pointed at himself, confused. Me? The moment Anna shot him a look, he instantly bared his teeth at Leo in a mock snarl. The disaster had brought them all closer. The mood was warm and comforting, even with the two resident idiots, Kevin and Marco, nursing sprained ankle from a failed attempt at earthquake crevice long jumping. As the group chatted, someone noticed a subtle shift. Hey, you two seem different somehow. Leo and Claire exchanged a knowing glance, their smiles secretive. That's a secret. Later that night, lying together in the small dorm room, the exhaustion of the day kept sleep at bay. There was too much to say. So, Leo began, his voice serious as he finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. How did you get here? Claire thought for a moment. I don't know exactly. What's the last thing you remember doing before? It happened, he pressed gently. This time, she answered without hesitation, a mischievous glint in her eye. Reading your diary. Leo froze. Which one? All of them, she said sweetly. His mind went into a catastrophic shutdown. Social death. You just skimmed them, right? He asked, his voice a faint, desperate plea. Nope, she replied cheerfully. I studied them, line by line, like I was prepping for an AP Lit exam. I can even recite some of my favorite parts if you want. No, he yelped, burying his face in her shoulder in utter mortification. After the initial shock of having his entire teenage angst laid bare, they fell into easy conversation, finally able to share the secrets they had carried alone for so long. So that Polaroid picture was the final clue? Leo asked, amazed by the sheer chance of it all. That, and a call from Vivian and Scott, she explained, recounting the chain of events that had led to her epiphany. It was a story of such improbable coincidences that it felt scripted by fate itself. I knew something was off about you, Claire said, poking him in the ribs. The happiness CSO. You were quite the actor. Leo sheepishly confessed everything. How he'd used his future knowledge to buy the domains for Happiness, Weibo, and others. How he'd invented future tech like Happy Reviews and Happy Life. How the entire Brainiac Blitz game was just an elaborate excuse to create the disaster prevention module for the Southwest. Claire listened, her initial annoyance melting into awe. You really haven't been idle these past 2 years, have you? It was all to earn your dowry, he said with a grin. What's mine is yours. I already registered the domains for TikTok, DoorDash, and a few others, by the way. She smirked. Good. 2 reborn people are better than 1. The joy is doubled. They talked for hours, revisiting old memories now cast in a new light. His miraculous academic turnaround in high school, the result of being a star tutor in his past life. Her sudden, fierce defense of him against his old crush, Sarah Lynn. She was trying to save the pathetic simp from making the same mistakes twice. You really thought I was just some clueless 18-year-old, didn't you? She teased. He laughed. Hey, I was trying to be ethical. A 30-something soul dating a high school girl felt a little creepy. She leaned in close, her eyes sparkling. And now, he looked at her, at the perfect fusion of the young woman he loved and the mature soul he now knew she possessed. Now, he said, a grin spreading across his face, I'm not so sure who's the older one here. Leo Hammer, you're dead, she shrieked, pouncing on him. Their laughter filled the quiet room, a sound of pure, unadulterated happiness. 2 days later, the group returned to East Bay. After saying their goodbyes at the airport, Leo and Claire headed back to their apartment at Rainbow Terrace, the one the roommates had affectionately dubbed the LNS dorm. The moment the door closed, they were in each other's arms. The passion that had been simmering since their reunion, suppressed by the presence of friends and the austere school dorms, finally erupted. They stumbled through the living room, shedding clothes as they went, until they fell onto the large bed in the bedroom. Their reunion was a storm of pent-up emotion, a celebration of 2 lifetimes of waiting. The friendship vibrating bed, for all its upgraded features, was no match for the occasion. It shorted out halfway through. Later, as they emerged from the shower, Claire coolly remarked, "This bed is substandard." Leo nodded sagely. "We'll need to file a complaint with Uncle 22. After a ravenous, home-cooked meal, they went for a walk. The night air was cool, and they strolled through the streets of their neighborhood, hand in hand. They passed the smoothie shop from last Christmas, a place that now held a sacred significance for them. The owners recognized them and excitedly asked for another photo to hang on their wall. This time, when asked for a message, Claire took the pen and wrote a line from a movie that wouldn't be released for years, a line that perfectly captured their story. All the encounters in this world are long-lost reunions. After leaving the shop, Leo smiled mysteriously. I want to take you somewhere. They took a taxi to a familiar part of the city. As they passed the intersection where the accident had happened in their past life, Claire tensed. Leo squeezed her hand. To hell with truck drivers, she muttered, a sentiment with which Leo wholeheartedly agreed. The taxi dropped them off in front of a residential building named Four Seasons Apartments. Claire looked at him, confused, until he pulled out a key and led her up to the 16th floor, opening the door to apartment 1602. This, he said softly, is where I lived in my last life. Claire stared, a sense of déjà vu washing over her. She had been here once before, after his death, to help his parents pack his belongings. The layout, the furniture, it was all eerily familiar. I bought it late last year, he explained, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted to show you, but I couldn't think of a good reason why. I wanted to show you all of me, the part of my life you never got to see. Now, I can. Standing in the small, unassuming apartment, Claire felt the last piece of their two lives click into place. In my last life, Claire Sterling regrets that she never got to be a part of Leo Wallace's life, she said, her voice soft but steady as she squeezed his hand. In this life, she will be there for every single moment. He led her through the apartment, sharing stories that weren't in his diaries. The time he comically failed to fix a leaky pipe, the lonely birthdays he'd spent cooking for himself, the countless nights he'd spent working in the small study. They ended up on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. There were times I thought I couldn't make it, he confessed, leaning on the railing. I'd come out here, look at this view, and feel like I could breathe again. My only regret was that I was always alone. I used to promise myself that one day, I'd find the most beautiful woman in the world to stand here with me, and we'd just watch the view all night. The memory was so potent that he instinctively pulled out the cigarette the diner owner had given him earlier. He was about to light it when he remembered he didn't smoke anymore, and she hated the smell. He started to put it away, but she gently stopped him. She unbuttoned her trench coat and stepped in front of him, using the fabric to shield the flame from the wind. In the flickering light of the fire he was about to create, her face was breathtaking. Just for tonight, she whispered, taking the lighter from his hand and holding the flame to his cigarette. Your beautiful woman is giving you permission. He took a drag, the smoke mixing with the faint, sweet scent of her perfume. For the first time in two lives, he felt completely, utterly supported. He wasn't alone anymore. A few days later, after leaving a mountain of work for their bewildered colleagues at Happy Nest and Sterling Holdings, we're just college students on summer break. It's perfectly reasonable. They returned to Northwood. They were greeted at home by an unusually helpful and enthusiastic Anna. The reason became clear that evening. Wyatt Way was coming to their house the next day for a formal meet-the-parents visit. You have to go easy on him, big brother, she pleaded in a whisper. Leo feigned righteousness. I would never use my sister's happiness as a bargaining chip. So about all that allowance money you stole from me over the years. The visit went surprisingly well, with Wyatt charming Leo's parents. That is, until Leo and Claire decided to have some fun. About the dowry, Leo began, looking serious. What he means, Claire cut in smoothly, is that the family assets you already lost to us in that wager don't count. You'll need to build a whole new fortune. Get to it. Wyatt and Anna stared at the diabolical couple, a single thought echoing in their minds. We've walked into a den of thieves. The summer in Northwood passed in a happy haze. Charles Sterling returned from East Bay, having unofficially retired, and spent his days fishing with his new best friend, Robert Wallace. The two fathers, unaware of their shared connection through their children, bonded over tall tales, and the tea Robert kept bringing over. Tea that looked suspiciously identical to the expensive collection Charles's daughter had borrowed years ago. The two men even ended up at a local barbecue joint one night, where a very drunk Charles called his disappointing but moderately successful future son-in-law to come meet his big brother. Leo arrived to find his father and his father-in-law clinking beer mugs. This is my big brother, Charles slurred, pointing at Robert. Call him uncle. Yeah, nephew, Robert said with a straight face. Show some respect. Leo, utterly bewildered, raised his glass. Uncle, I toast you. Later that night, as Leo helped the stumbling Charles home, the older man suddenly stopped, his eyes clear and sober for a moment. He squeezed Leo's shoulder, his voice firm. You've done well. From now on, Claire is in your care. It was a quiet, profound transfer of responsibility, the weight of which settled on Leo's shoulders, feeling both heavy and deeply right. The summer culminated in a gathering of their old high school friends at the Vault KTV. In a room filled with laughter and off-key singing, Leo and Claire took the stage. Without any background music, They sat on two stools and began to sing, their voices weaving together in perfect harmony. It was a song no one had ever heard before, a melody from a future they were the only ones to know. The lyrics spoke of fleeting encounters across seasons, a spring, a summer, an autumn, of memories almost forgotten but deeply felt, of two souls destined to wander separate paths before finding each other again. We seem to have met before. Do you remember? Leo sang, his voice soft and full of meaning. When we came to this life, each to our own horizon, Claire answered, her eyes locked on his. Who would have thought? They sang together, their voices rising in a beautiful, poignant harmony. We could meet again, just like a dream. The room was silent for a beat, then erupted in thunderous applause, a perfect, heartfelt end to a perfect summer. When September arrived, it was time to return to Berkeley for their junior year. The campus was abuzz with new freshmen, who were immediately indoctrinated into the school's most sacred traditions, namely, the fierce rivalry with Northwood High. Join us, an upperclassman from a newly formed anti-Northwood coalition urged a group of wide-eyed freshmen. We have a noble cause, and also, we can tell you which dining hall has the best food. The various clubs held their recruitment drives, each more chaotic than the last. The Game Dev Club tried to lure new members with photos of their girl, Hannah Ling, only to be chased down and beaten by their furious president, Ken Zhou, for stealing his private collection. The Comics and Animation Club, led by the beautiful Isabella Zhao, initially drew a massive crowd, but was quickly upstaged when the even more stunning Yvonne Moreau began recruiting for a special project, her cool, demanding demeanor only making the freshmen more eager to join. The new students from Northwood High, however, had their own path. They were immediately scooped up by Alex Zhang and put to work in the Blockhead workshop, handcrafting figurines. You're not just making toys, Alex declared grandly. You are building your future. Also, as employees, you get a 30% discount at all Gilded Phoenix businesses. The freshmen began working with renewed, fervent passion. While the campus buzzed with youthful energy, Leo and Claire were already moving in a different world. Now, in their junior year, they spent less time on campus and more time at their respective companies. As the co-CEO of Happy Nest and the new de facto head of Sterling Holdings, they were at the forefront of East Bay's ambitious new push to become a tech and e-commerce hub, a project personally overseen by Governor Zhao Bojan. After one high-level meeting, the governor invited them into his private office. You two are the future of this city, he said, his tone warm and fatherly. Anything you need, my door is always open. My phone is always on for you. Hey, put that down. That's my private tea collection, you little thief. Life settled into a new, busy rhythm. Marco and Quinn were still together, their relationship a stable, bickering romance. Leon and Molly were happily running the campus bike-sharing charity, and Leon had even started to win over Molly's parents. Jade was absorbed in her photography, and when asked about her love life, she would just smile mysteriously and say she hadn't met the right person yet, though she did have one interesting encounter back in her freshman year. And Dylan had a story to tell. So there I was, Dylan explained to his roommates, in the subway underpass, blindfolded, trying to get over my fear of talking to girls. At first, his experiment had been a disaster, attracting only muggers and creeps. He was about to give up when he heard soft footsteps stop in front of him. A girl's quiet chuckle broke the silence. Before he could stammer out an apology for his weird setup, she gently took his hand. She never spoke a word, but she came back every day. She would simply hold his hand, her silent presence giving him the courage to talk for hours. He told her everything about his roommates, his social anxiety, his adventures. Though he never saw her face or heard her voice, he felt a strange, deep connection to this mystery girl. He could feel her silent laughter through the light tremors in her hand, and her comfort when her grip tightened as he spoke of his struggles. The urge to see her became unbearable. One day, after she left, he tore off his blindfold and chased after her, following the faint, familiar scent of her perfume out of the station and onto the busy street. He spotted her across the road, a figure waiting at a crosswalk. Even from the back, he knew it was her. He tried to call out, but his voice was trapped in his throat by his old anxieties. Just as the light changed and she was about to be lost in the crowd, she paused, as if sensing his gaze, and turned around. It was Jade Jiang. Her face, free of the thick glasses she always wore, was even more beautiful than he'd realized. She smiled, a flicker of surprise in her eyes, and opened her mouth to speak. In that instant, a screech of tires cut through the air. "Get out of the way!" a man screamed. The brakes failed. An overloaded electric utility cart hurtled toward the crosswalk, out of control. The world went into slow motion. Dylan watched in horror as Jade was struck, her body thrown into the air like a doll. Her camera bag flew open, scattering dozens of photos like confetti. He didn't remember running, only the feeling of his knees hitting the pavement as he scrambled to her side. He gathered her into his arms, his body shaking uncontrollably. All around them lay the scattered photos. He picked one up. It was a picture of him, looking goofy and triumphant as he showed off his Naruto hand signs to the children in Xylaxia Town. He picked up another. It was him, looking awkward but determined, reciting poetry in the park. Another showed him blindfolded in the subway, waiting. They were all of him. An open photo album lay beside her. On the first page was a picture from their first day of freshman year. He was blindfolded with a handkerchief, clumsily asking a bewildered-looking girl for directions. In his memory, the sun had been too bright, her face a blur. But now he remembered. The girl in the photo, the girl who had guided the lost, blindfolded boy to the clinic, was the same girl now, lying silent in his arms. Her glasses were broken. Her familiar bangs were swept aside, revealing a face that was both familiar and new, fragile and pale. Jade, he whispered, the name coming out effortlessly. Wake up. When she didn't respond, a lifetime of silence broke within him. He looked up at the horrified crowd, his eyes red with tears, and for the first time in his life, he screamed. Call 911. Somebody help her. Help.